let's determine if two conditional statements are equivalent. First, let's talk about four types of conditionals. We have the basic conditional, if then, right? If P, then Q. And you'll notice the first part is called the antecedent, and the back part is called the consequent. I usually just call them the front and back, but proper terminology is important in the world. The converse of if P, then Q is if Q, then P. The inverse, right? These are all, lost my pen, these are all in comparison to the conditional, right? So if the conditional is if P, then Q, the converse would be if Q, then P. The inverse would be if not P, then not Q. So you'll notice we just negated both pieces. And then the contrapositive is not just negating, but reversing the order. So we have ourselves four distinct conditional statements. Now, I want to know if any of these are equivalent. So we're going to do a truth table for the conditional, the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive, and determine if any of these are equivalent. So I'm going to create the truth table like the bare bones, and then we'll fill it in together. Okay, since we are playing with P and Q, we have 4 lines. So I start with true, true, false, false, and then Q, true, false, true, false. We're going to start the first 2 columns of negation, remembering that negating is simply the opposite truth values. So for not P, we'll go false, false, true, true. And then for not Q, we would go false, true, false, true. Okay, let's get into this. So now we are dealing with conditionals. Remember that with conditionals, they are only false when the antecedent or the front end is true, but the back end, the consequent, is false. So the front end being P, so I'm going to focus there. I go true, true. That's true. True, false. That's false for a conditional. False, true is true. False, false is true. There's my truth table for my conditional. Now let's go to if Q, then P. So now Q is the front or the antecedent. So I got to make sure I start there. So I'm going true, true. That's true. False, true. That's true. True, false. That's false. And false, false is true. So you'll notice 1 and 2 are not equivalent because the middle 2 are not the same truth values. Let's go to number 3 where we get if not P, then not Q. So now not P is the antecedent. So make sure I start there. False, false. That is true. False, true. Well, that's true. True, false. That's false. And true, true. Well, that's true. So you'll notice 2 and 3 are equivalent. We'll come back to that in a minute. Let's do number 4. Not Q. If not Q, then not P. So now not Q is the antecedent. So false, false. Well, that's true. True, false. Well, that's false. False, true. That's true. True, true. That's true. And you'll see 1 and 4 are the same. So if we're talking about conditionals, the conditional and the contrapositive are equivalent. And the converse and the inverse are equivalent. But the fun thing is, if you think about how you get from the conditional, if P then Q, to the contrapositive, we negate it and flip it. Well, that's exactly what we're doing with the converse and the inverse. Notice how if Q then P, if you flip that and negate them, you get if not P then not Q. These 2 are also contrapositives of each other. So the contrapositives are what are equivalent. Right? Head exploding. Exciting. All right, let's do one with words. Consider the statement. If you wear a red shirt, I am not going to the movie. It's legit. Find its equivalent conditional statement. Okay, now sometimes you got to kind of think through this. So to think about the equivalent is the contrapositive. So we just talked about this a little bit. Contrapositive means negate both parts and switch them, right? Reverse the order. Okay, so we have 2 parts. This is one part. This is one part. So let's negate. If you wear a red shirt, okay, let's To negate that, we put the word don't. If you don't wear a red shirt, how do we negate the second part? I am going to the movies. Okay, so that's the negation. And now let's flip it. So we start here. I am going to the movie if you don't wear a red shirt. And if you prefer it to be an if-then statement, you could say, if I'm going to the movie, then you aren't wearing a red shirt. Right? Same basic idea. They mean the same thing. The whole point is you negate both pieces, either adding in the not, taking away the not, whatever. You negate it, and then you flip the two statements, and now we have an equivalent statement. And that makes sense. Totally makes sense. So fun there with some contrapositives, both in symbols and with words.